Okay, folks, welcome to module number 12 here, and this is our project work time here. And this week, remember, we are going to have Thanksgiving recess, so there will be no live session on Wednesday. So just today, that we will be working primarily on projects and looking over the Lab 11, which is on networking and providing an example of some networking code that you can use to support your current development. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and dive into module number 11, or 12, excuse me. And here's just a fun pre-class warm-up for stuff for folks to look at from the fun comic called XKCD. And what we have here is just something to keep in mind as you're working with your teammates on how not to do code review when you're working with teammates. So it's just kind of a funny comment here on it, but make sure that you're being respectful when working with your teammates and critiquing the code, not the person writing the code. So just little reminders that I like to set that'll help you hopefully go further in your software career. Just to remember some of these little things as you're working in teams. Okay, so last class we talked about design patterns. We looked at several creational patterns, for example, decorator pattern, some structural patterns as well with the decorator. But we looked at some creational patterns like the prototyping pattern, the builder pattern, and so on. So hopefully some of those will become useful for you in your project. Do think about using some of those if you find a need, depending on your extra feature. Okay, so if we have any questions, we'll take care of them on Monday's live session and jump into those. And just a little bit of logistics before we jump into today's topic, which is just going to be a quick review on the networking code. But Lab 10 is due, so make sure that you've pushed that to your team's repository by this Wednesday. And make sure you're also reviewing the final project specs. As far as I've been informed from our project managers, that everybody's checked in at least for their first milestone. I'm expecting folks to start checking in this week or shortly after the break on their second milestone and making sure folks are moving along there. So again, today's just a really, really quick lecture, and I'm just going to talk about the code for the lab on networking and just how to start thinking about separating it out. And you'll have some sample networking code to look at, so that will be Lab 11 here. Okay, so with that said, we'll take care of any of these things and just do a quick code walkthrough through some networking code for a UDP client and server. Now, today I've provided UDP, but you might be using TCP, which is fine. Either strategy can be fine for this project, but I just happened to work on a quick UDP model for us. Okay, so I'll jump back to our daily wisdom after showing you the code here. So what I've got here is our lab here, so you can see which path we're in, lab number 11 here. And I've already generated the CMake files, so I'm going to get a let me jump into the bin folder here and just regenerate them so you'll know how to do that. My build files have already been built. I can run make again, and you'll have your app and your app test. Okay, so I'm just going to run this just so you see what the code does, and we'll do a little dive into it. For this particular one here, let me split my window. Let's go ahead and launch our app and have a server. So the server is going to start running and listening here. And then I'm going to launch another app here. Let's do it for the client. Let's have Mike join particular port that our server is listening to, 5001 here. And we have one client that's joined on the server here. There's one message that's been sent. Every time a client joins, the server sends this message, hello, Mike is joining. Okay, so if we want another client to join, launch another app, launch another client. This will be Mike number 2. Let's connect to the same port here, and then the server gets the update when a new client has joined, and our new client gets all the messages or the history from the server of events happening. So capturing that Mike is joining, and then Mike 2 has now joined, and then you'll also see that message was broadcast to the other client here as well. Let's do it one more time just to make sure it's working properly. So have another client join, mic number 3 here. Same port and same idea here. So the message is sent here. We get the whole history of previous commands, and then messages are broadcast back out to each of our clients from the server about events that are happening. Okay, so that's the code that you have here. Let's go ahead and shut this down and look at the actual code here. So we'll have in lab 11, the part 1 folder, there's only one part, the different code here. So just something to keep in mind, just the abstraction, you'll notice that there's a UDP network client and a UDP network server here. So I'm going to start with the header files just so you can see where they are in GitHub. And again, that we have the networking client and the abstractions for things like sending commands, for instance, to the server, or sending string data, for instance, if you're just sending a message. So you could have different ones, but this is going to be really important for your abstraction, that you're probably going to be sending commands to the server for things like drawing pixels, for instance. Okay, and then just some other information that's necessary for each of the servers to have, like what the IP address is. If this is the client we're looking at, so what the username is, the port that they're connected to, IP address, server port, server IP address, and then the socket for which they will communicate. Okay. The UDP network server looks similar in a way that you can start the server with name, address, port, start the server, and then you can stop the server and sort of close things down. Now the server is keeping track of some other information like the clients that have joined, so that sort of have a unique ID for each of the clients and their IP address for which they're communicating. And then the packet history, so there's an example of setting up a packet, and then a history of the messages that have been sent. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to structure this, but this will hopefully just give folks something to look at, paying attention to one, having separate client and server classes for your network. A server class and a client class can make things really nice. And then also a separate packet for the information that you are sending. Okay. So these are just a few ideas. There is no drawing. I've included all the app and command and all these things, but you'll notice there's just running in an infinite loop with the text in it. And then there's also the catch framework attached. Okay. So just a really quick piece of code here. Hopefully it will be helpful for folks if they're struggling with the networking to sort of use this as a starter code to start thinking about, again, just getting things up and running. This will be also similar to the previous lab if we go back to lab 8 on networking, but here starting to separate things out, thinking about sending commands, thinking about storing the command history and how that might be passed back and forth. Okay. So that's it. This is going to be really a short video here and just some wisdom for you on your projects because, hopefully at this point, folks have done a lot of the planning for this project. And in a sense, we're all in at this point in the semester, and that we don't really have too many deliverables or assignments or anything else. And it is easy to sort of get things up and running. There's sort of this famous thing called the Pareto principle that the first 80% of the work only takes 20% of the effort, but the final 20% of the work takes 80% of the effort later on. So that's part of the sort of Pareto principle on just sort of getting things started. But again, hopefully this lab will help you with networking, get 80% of the way there, and then you can figure out the remainder. Okay. So with that said, we'll do the lab and we'll do something a little bit different for those joining the live session, where we'll be getting together and breaking out into smaller groups to get some folks talking amongst themselves to discuss design challenges that they're having and then we'll move forward from there. Okay, so that's all I've got for you folks, and hopefully everybody's doing well, and I will see you, if I don't see you at the live session, the following week. So hopefully everybody has a safe and happy holiday.